We got the funk. Funky Politics on the Kazookian Network.
You're listening to Funky Politics powered by the Kazookian Network. I am DC, your host, and man, you know, today I got the one and only Luther Mercer, our education correspondent, sitting in with us here on Funky Politics. What's up, Luther? You all right?
My brother. Blessings.
Blessings, brother.
Blessings. You know, we got the holiday coming up.
Holidays, man.
What you ready? What you getting?
You know, I ain't getting you nothing, but we got a gift today. We got an important brother in the studio with us today. Let me tell you, you guys want to stick around for this show. This is going to be one hard-hitting show. Right. We've got the superintendent of Shelby County Schools, Dorsey Hopson. Welcome to the program again, Brother Hopson.
Yeah, glad to be here, my brother.
The one and only, but he's leaving us.
Yeah, he's the one and only.
But he's leaving.
He is leaving us.
Some call me short time.
You know what? Let me tell you something. Back in the day, I used to work for the correction center. And our guys out there say, "Man, how many days you got?" I got 5 in a wake up. So I don't know how many more you got, but you got something in the wake up going on. Let's jump right into this thing. I want to talk about the state of the district. The state of our district here. When you took this thing over, we were just merged on, trying to get that merger together with Memphis City Schools and with Shelby County. From a grade perspective, A, B, C, D, when you took it up, and I know it probably is going to be a low grade because of so much confusion. Yeah. And where are we at today in your leaving?
So I think you think about 6 years ago, there was so much chaos and confusion. The question on the table was really whether school was going to even open.
Yes,
in August of 2013, you had 2 school boards suing each other, the county commission suing the Shelby County School Board. Remember, the judge had to get involved and appoint a special master so that things could move forward. So I think given the chaos and the financial mess we were in and all the things that we were in, I mean, we probably didn't even deserve a grade, right? It was that bad. I would say now, 6 years later, we made significant improvement. I'd probably say we're probably about a C+.
C+? Right now?
Right now. Okay. And the reason I say that, I think there's 2 parts to that. I think the financial piece and the operational piece is probably trending more towards a high B, and let me tell you why. Again, we took over, we had $100 million deficit. We had to lay off 2,000 people. Fast forward, we've had about a $20 million surplus the last couple of years, and instead of laying off 2,000 people, now we're paying people a living wage. We actually
kudos to you on that.
$15 an hour, and then we also the last couple of years have been able to invest about $50 million back into the schools in the form of teacher raises, additional social and emotional support inside classes, the Summer Learning Academy. So I think that we're a whole lot better than we were, 6 years ago, but we still have a lot of work to do, particularly around some of the student outcomes and student achievement we want to see. And I think that since we're so stable now and have some good reps over the last few years, I think you're going to see student achievement continue to improve at a much more rapid pace. Okay.
Well, speaking about that, when you talk about this achievement gap, I keep hearing these conversations around when you came in, you had Rod as your deputy, you had some other things in place, you made some changes. And then in making those changes, there was a lot of things that happened with Heidi when she came in, Heidi Ramirez, she came in and not being able to put together an academic plan during her time. And then what are you seeing now as the turnaround where after those changes, disruption, now moving into this new phase, where are you seeing that achievement growing, I guess, based on that?
Well, I think that, a lot of things have happened in addition to just the merger. There have been a lot of changes with Tennessee academic standards. People hear about Common Core, college and career standards. And so what happened was, I think since I've been in the role, the standards have changed at least twice, right? Yeah. And so as the standards change, which I agree with, we basically want our kids to be higher, do more analysis and think at a much higher level, and teach kids to think, not just to read and regurgitate, right? So that requires a lot of different strategies, different curricula, different focus, and different ways of teaching and learning. So I think that over the past few years, we had to get that right? And then in addition to it, you put in a merger and a demerger and fiscal, instability. I think right now what you've had the last 2+ years, you've had a homegrown academic team. You've had Angela Whitelaw, who's our chief of schools. Dr. Ray, who I'm sure we'll talk about, who's been been one of our academic chiefs. And then Antonio Burt recently has been our chief academic officer. And I think all 3 of those folks had such credibility with schools, right? Because most of them came up through the Shelby County School District. And there was also, a commitment by all of us to stop changing stuff, right? You do something, you change it. You do something, you change it. And those changes, though, were really forced by or reactions to the different academic standards. So once we got something we were comfortable with, we stuck with it, and I think we'll see dividends.
Well, just real quick to follow up on that. So when I was mentioning about Heidi, when she was finishing out, again, that academic plan wasn't really in place. You brought Sharon over. When Sharon was there, she was kind of touring with, okay, we're going to bring in this particular supplement. We're going to try to bring in this curriculum. And so, then Sharon took her new position. And so it kind of left a void for a long time. What are you seeing that, like, when you say this now, this new team, what are you seeing they bring to the table regarding the academic framework for moving forward, I guess?
Yeah, so I don't even think there was a hole, right?
Okay,
I think that, so you had Sharon, who I love, Dr. Griffith, but her team, like Angela Whitelaw, was really her right-hand person.
Okay.
And so Angela's been here through Sharon and Heidi, and that's the first ILD I ever hired. So I think that, in her elevated role, she's really been able to shine, right? I think she knows the work. She's so passionate about the work. And I think with her partnerships with Dr. Ray and Dr. Burt, it's just brought us stability and kind of a one-voice approach that had been missing. I think because they're so steeped in the standards, because they know a lot of operational challenges that we have in our students, that stability, I think, is going to bode well for SES.
We're listening to Funky Politics, powered by the Kazuki Network. Before I get into this minority business piece I want to talk about, there's a lot of talk about Memphis City Schools, and you're a product. I'm a product. I know. You're not one, Luther, but and that's okay. It's okay.
Is it okay? I don't know if it's okay.
I went to White Station University. Wow. White Station University.
Respect the Haven.
Yes, well, and Whitehaven Junior College. White. But anyway, the point that Memphis City Schools was a poor district. I hate this social media piece where it's always Dr. Harrington killed the. I got one of the best educations I could ever gotten, free of charge, from Memphis City Schools. It wasn't a bad. Were there some things that need to be tweaked? Yes, probably, right, Superintendent? But was it that bad a district when you took it over?
No, I think that, when people say bad districts when they're talking about student outcomes, I think that the piece that we don't talk enough about is parental involvement, right?
Sure, that's right.
And that's tied directly to poverty in many instances. So, I have 2 kids in the district, and they're doing exceptionally well.
Yeah,
I know friends who we're sending, kids to Ivy League schools and schools across the country. They come straight out of Memphis City / Shelby County Schools. Right. So you can get some awesome teaching and learning, some awesome opportunities, some awesome chances to excel. But you need to have the family supports and structures around to take advantage of it, and also to motivate kids to want to be their best. So I would push back anybody to say that, we're not a good school district, or Memphis City Schools wasn't good, because we have some of the best teachers and student leaders and school leaders in the country.
Who predated this merger.
Exactly. Could you piggyback off that poverty piece for a minute? Because I think people need to really hear the impact of what poverty is and how you have
those
to
numbers
navigate
you told us before.
Yeah, absolutely, because how you have to navigate that. Because you're saying, when I was mentioning to you earlier about academics, you said, okay, yes, but these environmental impacts are impacting how we can do our work. So could you talk a little bit about that?
So I guess I'd start off by saying, the school district is laid out, and it starts from a premise that kids are going to come to school in kindergarten ready to learn, right? But there are so many factors when you live in poverty that prevent you from coming to school ready to learn, and then you have to supplement and remediate that so the kids are actually ready to learn. Kids come to school haven't eaten. Kids don't have electricity. Kids don't have proper medical care.
Hygiene.
Kids are, dodging gang recruitment folks. So if you got to do all these things, you don't wake up on Monday morning, ready to engage in algebra. And I think that the number is staggering. I mean, you have, and I sound like a broken record, but I'm going to keep saying it, 40,000 kids who live in households where the income is less than $10,000 a year.
Yeah.
Wow. 40,000.
Yeah.
Hamilton County in Chattanooga has 40,000 kids. If you look at all the municipal school districts, all the municipal districts, they probably have roughly 30,000 kids between all of them. We have 40,000 kids who live in households with incomes less than $10,000 a year. So that just creates circumstances and challenges where you have to supplement to make sure those kids are ready to learn. And, many parents do their best, but then also we have some parents who don't do their best.
Right.
So we have to make sure we account for all that. So those are things that's why I'm just so, impressed with and so indebted to our teachers.
Yeah.
Because people think about somebody standing from a blackboard writing some stuff on the wall and asking people to regurgitate. Well, no, you got to make sure, is Johnny falling asleep, or are there symptoms of abuse, or just all this stuff, and that just comes with poverty. But it's not an excuse, because we have so many kids who rise above it
and who have made it out of the poverty. Right?
And that's why the education is so important, because I know personally, for many of our kids, a good education is the last best chance to change their circumstance in life, and that's why we got to get it right.
No doubt.
You're listening to Funky Politics, powered by the Kazuki Network. And going on that poverty piece and talking about where our district has come from or morphed into, I would guess. Have we gotten a lot of, and I think because of the work that Sharon has done with ISO. Now I think she's moved on to ASD, but with those types of programs that were instituted really via the state, has that exactly changed, or has it challenged our district to do a much better job?
No, I think it's certainly helped us to move poor performing schools that are in chronically underperforming neighborhoods, right? Like all these schools that are on the quote unquote priority list, they're in the neglected neighborhoods and been neglected for years. And so I think part of that neglect has been, we're not going to make investments in infrastructure. We're not going to make investments in the neighborhood. And so, you get just this cycle of, downtroddenness, and nobody's addressed it. So I think that with, I guess, the last 5 or 6 years with the focus on priority schools, it's made us invest resources, both monetary and human resources, into schools that have traditionally not been served. And I just want to say, I'm going to give, our team a plug. When we started this work in 2013, I think we had 65 or 68 of the 85 priority schools were part of Shelby County Schools, Memphis City Schools. So now with the last list being run, I think there are only 18 district-run schools that are part of Shelby County Schools.
Repeat that. Repeat that, because see, that needs to be said.
Right.
That needs to be said again.
65 priority schools in Memphis City Schools 5+ years ago. Now, with the most recent priority list, only 18 district-run schools are on the priority list.
Yeah. Kudos to your team.
Yeah.
Wait, and you know what? Want to highlight on this point, and I don't know if you remember, Dorsey, we met many years ago. When Van was working with you and so forth. Yeah. But then we were reintroduced when I came on board to work with the Charter Center, doing lobbying and policy work for them.
Yeah.
Could you talk a little bit about, everybody talked about the panacea being, we're going to create different models, and one of those models being charters is going to be introduced. Again, myself thinking, hey, charter can be a model, it can be a good place, but could you talk about the impact that's had on the district, positive or negative, and then also where you think it needs to go moving forward? Like, what does this district need to look like with additional models or with a reduction?
Yeah, I think it's a bit of a mixed bag, right? I think that we have some very, very high performing charters. I think about Roblin over Freedom Prep and other folks who are just doing an outstanding job. Sure. So when you got people doing a great job, then that's awesome for kids. But then we've got, more than a handful of charters that aren't doing a good job, and some of them are even on the priority list. And so I think that there was really no strategy around having a framework for making sure you had good charters and then helping them grow, and then making sure you shut down bad charters. Mm-hmm. And so what's happened is just become a charter free-for-all. Like, everybody's got a charter school now. Okay. And so I think that with no strategy and with no influx of kids, what you really are doing is your charters are cannibalizing each other. Yeah. It's causing a financial drain all the way around. And kids aren't really getting any better of an education. Okay. What needs to happen, or what I'd like to see happen, is that a lot of collaboration with the district and the charter community, and we need to right size our district. Okay. We need to say what are the right amount of buildings that need to be operated, irrespective of who operates them, and then let's build some new facilities and get poor black and brown kids out of raggedy buildings, in tough neighborhoods, and get them what they need. Okay. Right now, though, it appears to me, because every year we go through this process, 25, 30 people will apply for a charter school. We may approve 9 or 10. And so you have constantly more schools coming online, but there are no more kids, right? Like, we've got all these schools that are underutilized, probably 50 that, are half full. And so, what that tells me is we have way too many buildings. So what needs to happen is let's get the number of buildings right. Mm-hmm. Let's build some new buildings so the kids, in Melrose and South Memphis have the same opportunity to have a learning environment like the kids in Collierville. Okay. And let's support the charters that are getting good student outcomes, and let's not support the ones that don't.
Absolutely. So the strategy, who's responsible for that? Who do you think needs to be leading the way of saying, okay, here's state, here's district, here's the strategy for what we need to do, and stop trying to just have this blanket of saying, all right, here we're going to lay a charter down and that's it?
Yeah, I think that, the superintendent is a good place to start, but the reality is that the politics around us have been so divisive that it's hard for a superintendent to say, let me take the bull by the horns and show you what you need to do. Because I got people on the board who don't like charter schools.
That's right.
Or who don't like ASD. Right. You know, and, you know, my thinking has always been, or my talking has always been like, shouldn't be about, we should be for good schools. Right. But there's a lot of politics behind that. So I think, though, now we're at a critical point where people realize that the ASD has 26 or so schools and all their buildings are in bad shape. Right. We've got all these buildings in bad shape. So I think there's a great opportunity now to come back to the table to see if we can have some critical thinking around what really needs to happen.
So let me ask you, we're going to cut this and we're going to go to another piece, but all ASD and the charters, they're not forced to use those underutilized buildings, are they?
So the ASD, basically, what they have done is they've taken over a school in the neighborhood. So if I take over, you know, a school in South Memphis that's half utilized, then you get that bit. That's it.
But we're not forcing charters. We're not forcing anybody. But in terms of charter, if the charters were pushed to use those underutilized buildings, would that not help us in terms of not having a big empty edifice in the middle of even sometimes a dying community? So to speak?
But so charters also they lease some buildings from us, but then they also have their own space. But we don't. I think we maybe have 5 or 6 vacant buildings now.
Wow.
I think that's since we closed about 30, that just puts some context in it. But the reality is that we got to figure out how to right size the district.
But hold that thought. We'll be right back. You're listening to Funky Politics, powered by the Kazuki Network. We've got our very own superintendent, still our superintendent, the one and only Dorsey Hopson with us here.
Riffin' on jazz.
I think I know a lot about jazz.
It's only what you've been doing the last 30-some years.
Yeah,
right?
I know.
A voice that can make you laugh and make you cry.
Good jazz. You don't have to worry about what they're talking about. But when they pick up those instruments, we all speak the same language. And don't you know you went in the kitchen and come back with a big bowl of salad?
Riffin' on jazz on the Kazukian Network.
Hi, I'm Dorsey Hopson, Superintendent of the Shelby County Schools, and you're listening to Funky Politics, powered by the Kazukian Network.
We're back right here on Funky Politics, powered by the Kazukian Network. I am DC, sitting here as your host today with Luther Mercer, our education correspondent, education guru, education guy is what he is. He's an all-around guy.
At one time, I was a Renaissance man. Can I be a Renaissance man again?
Wait. He's also a Renaissance man.
Thank you very much.
In the Renaissance man or whatever. But anyway,
Renaissance education guru.
Renaissance education. Well, I'm sitting with our champion, our fighter in Memphis and Shelby County for our kids.
Absolutely.
And that is our superintendent, Dorsey Hopson of the Shelby County Schools. And of course, again, welcome to our program. What you've done, and I know that you're segueing out right now. You're leaving what you got now on the table and saying, "Hey, I think I've got it across. I've got it at least down to the 5-yard line. Can y'all score this thing? Let's see what we can do."
I'm very proud. I can say without a doubt that we're leaving in a much better shape than we found.
Okay.
And I think the best days are ahead of us.
ASD. We want to hit that ASD piece real quick.
Okay, just real quick, Dorsey, because we were talking about buildings and utilization. ASD, when it came in, law had you guys saying, all right, you give these guys buildings, and then you're responsible for them. And that caused a conversation around CIP money. It caused a conversation around, state, what are you putting in? The challenge has been that, I know some of these buildings that they're in are challenging, and again, they're requiring you to keep them up. But then we got a responsibility because some of those kids are our kids. Yeah. So talk a lot, or just talk briefly, because I know we need to move on, but talk briefly about what that means for you, just overall about the ASD in its condition around that CIP, because these buildings, as you mentioned, in facilities, look, man, this is such a critical piece to kids being able to go into a safe place, a nurturing place to be able to there learn.
Well, it causes a strain with our relationship, but I think it's also a part of the bigger issue around we have too many buildings in bad shape. I was talking to Sharon a few weeks ago. There was an issue, I think, at Georgian Hills Elementary School where they're having a tough time getting a boiler, so kids had to be out because it was too cold.
Wow.
And the question became, the thought was that we somehow deprioritize ASD buildings, which is not true. I mean, that boiler was out, but we may have 50 boilers out, right? There may be a bad roof, at Libertas, but we may have 50 bad roofs, or there may be. So, like, at the end of the day, because we do own those buildings, and most of them are in bad shape, we treat those buildings just like all the rest of our buildings. It's just the pie that we have, to keep up our buildings just isn't large enough, to address all of our $500 million in deferred maintenance. And when you get, $60 million or so a year, which we appreciate from the county commission, and with that you're trying to build a school and do HVAC, redos, you just don't have enough to take care of all the stuff you have, which is why we need to scrap the bad buildings, build some new ones, and get poor black and brown kids in new learning facilities.
Superintendent, and I go back a long way in Shelby County government. I worked there some years ago. I remember in '94 when Jim Rout, the county mayor, got a bond issue approved in Shelby County through the commission to build new facilities, the South Winds and so forth in the county. Mm-hmm. But what we wanted in the city was air conditioning. Yep. Shouldn't we have gotten new buildings too at the same time? But now come on now. And you I think you may have been in Atlanta at the time, but we asked for air conditioning. Yeah.
Well, I'm very familiar with it because you remember when I was the general counsel of Memphis because we sued the City of Memphis.
That's right.
And their argument for why they weren't paying is they said we still owe them money for the bond issuance for the air conditioners in 1990 or whatever. But side note, but priorities change. I mean, that was 30 years ago or 20 years ago. 20 so I think now, all of our buildings are 25 years older.
Yeah, plus the 50 they already were.
Exactly.
These buildings were built during the time when I think Roosevelt and Johnson came in and built some of those.
It's 6 that's 100, right? 6 buildings you got 100 years old, and then it's like 16 that are 80 plus. And
we've got buildings where we've had boilers that have never been replaced like 60 plus years. I mean, you hope they keep going, but at some point they're going to be issues.
Bruce is one of those older schools, right?
So we actually have a new Bruce now. We tore that down.
Where have I been?
It was next to Bellevue, and then we put a new Bruce behind Bellevue.
Oh, well, God, where have I been?
You're sleeping, man.
Yeah, I know. I got to drive down that street a lot more.
That's right. Even I knew that, and I'm not even here from it.
Well, maybe I knew that, but I remember Bruce being one of those older.
You talked bad about me just a moment ago, talking about I didn't go to Memphis State Schools.
Idlewild, Central, Peabody, most of the Midtown schools are historic old buildings.
Right. And you can tell when you walk in them because of some of the elevated stairs on them. They were built back in now the ADA, in terms of ADA compliance. You got to kill us to do that thing, right? The retrofit. But I want to get into another piece because you talk about ADA compliance. You talk about $60 million money from the county to help in our CIP. Let's talk about minority contracting.
Right.
Minority contracting. Memphis City Schools did not have a good track record when we had black superintendents.
Yep.
And I don't want to just put on black folk because any superintendent,
right.
Shelby County Schools, you all have improved now.
Yep.
But even when you took over and a few years into that, the numbers were extremely low. You all have more discretionary spending, maybe not as much on the CIP side because you're not building a lot of buildings now as a city or the county, but a lot more discretionary spending. Let's talk about that right now.
Yeah, I think it just always has to be a priority, right? I think that when we started, it was probably somewhere around 6 or 7% with MWBE. So we're up this year to 34.8%. And I think it's just because we've made a intentional effort. And a couple of things have happened too. So we did a disparity study.
Did you disparity study?
That we just finished, I guess, last September, October, and then that gave us really the impetus to be more aggressive. But I think that, in a community like Memphis where poverty is overwhelming, helping minority businesses to build wealth can in turn support the community and be one of the poverty fighting strategies. So I think kudos to our board because they've been very, very focused on, when we bring stuff to the board, that's part of the checklist of stuff. Were there minority vendors who applied for this, and what do we do to make sure we did everything we could within the law to make sure that we were equitable in awarding these contracts? So it just requires attention and consistent monitoring.
You're listening to Funky Politics, powered by the Kazuki Network.
So is that also direct vendors and subcontract? I mean, how is that? You know the numbers and how they break out?
Yeah, no. So what we basically do is, you're right. We probably spend, $300 million a year in different kind of contracts. Everything from
you're killing the city. I think you're killing the county.
Yeah, you might be killing the county.
If you take out the bill, you're killing both of them.
So
with $300 million.
Our budget is roughly $1 billion, and probably about 70% of that is salaries and benefits, and the rest of it is fruits and vegetable contracts, consulting contracts, construction contracts, and the whole gamut of everything. So I think that what we've shown is that where there are opportunities to work with the minority business community to make sure they know about the opportunities that are available and then support in every way we can. I mean, we've done that, and I think we'll continue to do it at a much greater rate.
You know, I guess one of the things that a lot of us look at right now is, and one of those things is we try to break it out. You know, the minority spend. We've talked to the city. We've talked to the airport authority. We talked to the county. MLG&W is it's another division of city government that does an extremely good job of minority spend. And I guess going forward, now that you're leaving, I would assume that this board is still just as wedded to
absolutely.
The minority spend as they were, you know, as when you guys did the disparity study, right?
We were all lockstep in wanting to make sure that we dramatically increase that because we know it's good for the city and ultimately good for our kids.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think you also did the $15 an hour piece, right? Let's talk a little bit about that because poverty in our city is outrageous. But even in our district, we've got 40,000 kids whose parents or whose families only earn about $10,000. So you know they're not making $15 an hour, right?
Right. Yep. That was part of the thinking. I mean, you know, you
gotta be kidding me.
As a small lever in our, you know, equity agenda, we felt like, you know, if you could empower these parents where they don't have to work 2 and 3 jobs, you know, it may afford them some time to spend more time with their kids.
Maybe to come by and see a play.
Yep. No, but I mean, I remember it was probably, I mean, there weren't a lot of things that I did in my tenure that I just to say, you know, I'm just going to do this.
Yeah.
But it was like around March of last year, approaching the King anniversary, and I called my CFO. I was out of town and was sitting around thinking. I called him. I said, "Well, what would it look like if we did this?" Yeah. And he gave me
a good finance guy with it too.
Lynn Johnson.
Yeah, that guy, he's
awesome.
He's hella fine.
He said, "Well, here's what it cost, and here's how we could do it." I said, "You know what? We doing it.
Let's do it."
And I think that was long overdue. And I'm glad to see now many other public entities and corporations are following suit. I mean, you can't. I think it was Dr. King said, you know, it's not the unemployed, it's the underemployed.
Yeah,
that's really wearing our community out.
Yeah, right. If you don't mind, I would like to transition for just 1 second. For you, when you think about some of the things that did pop up that were challenges, for example, Treadwell and grading scandals and all that. Trevor.
See, you're not from here, I know.
Yeah, see, there you go. There I go.
Bruce.
Hey, look, I ain't gonna have them folks in church come on and whip him. That's right. Them boys at church will whip you, man. Hey, Craig Littles, I know Craig, man.
Guess what? I don't drive over there.
Craig with police department. Craig Littles. I got Luther Mercer.
Look at you.
He is a good brother.
But as you saw some of these things, these challenges, I mean, what were some of those challenges to you? What do you think, like, for yourself, like, okay, how could I have been, because now I know you got to be a lot reflective on, hey, man, when I was here, this is what I was doing, how did you lay out some of these challenges like the grading scandal and say, okay, here was a challenge. Where was that kind of thing that you think is yourself could have been better, could have been stronger in that work?
You're listening to Funky Politics, powered by the Kaduki Network. Go ahead, Superintendent.
Yeah, I think that, you know, any good leader, you know, first of all, doesn't run from mistakes, doesn't run from challenges. And then I think the sign of a good leader is not to say you're not going to make mistakes. It's just you got to learn from them and then do better and then put processes in place to make sure those same mistakes don't happen again. I think with the Tresvent situation, which was probably the one of the biggest challenges, I think that, you know, making sure on the front end that we had processes to avoid what happened from happening was something I hate we didn't do. What I found too, so many of our processes were so manual, right? So like, you know, you basically, somebody changed the grade, somebody fills in a form and then you put it in a drawer somewhere and you just operate or assume that people are going to do what they're supposed to do. And 99% of our people do exactly what they're supposed to do. Right. But when you got 12,000 employees, some folks are going to do wrong. Right. So I think the learning behind that was, you know, to always inspect what you expect and then more importantly, put
inspect what you expect. I like that.
Non-manual processes in place, and then you got to. We hired a team of people that do transcript checks. They just pop up at schools now, make sure people are doing the right thing. So proud of the way that we responded to that. But you know, obviously, you know, I wish that we had been more aware that possibility that it happening was even out there.
What do you say to the people? And there's talk out there, Superintendent. What do you say to people that say, "Well, I'm not sure that you did a comprehensive investigation." And I know the person that led it. Yeah. Stanton is a stand-up guy. And I know he's not going to release a report that's junk. Yep. Former U.S. attorney. I know he's not going to do that. But there are people, the pundits out there, that say, "Well, is that really what happened?" You still got those folks out there that got questions. Yeah. and they think there were scapegoats out there.
Yeah.
Are you satisfied as a superintendent that you uncovered every leaf that was there, you looked under every rock that was there, and you got the answers, as ugly as they were?
Yeah.
And some are ugly, and sometimes we need to admit that it's ugly.
Well, I think I'm satisfied of the processes that came out of it to make sure that, we minimize the likelihood of something like that happening again. But I think that when you're trying to go back and look at 10 years worth of stuff, and, different kind of record keeping, different computer systems, 2 different school systems, I don't know that you ever just fully find out exactly what happens. But what we know for sure is that at Tresvant, they were changing transcripts. I mean,
we know that.
No question
call it
about
what
that.
You call it like you say it.
And that at other schools where we found that people were changing grades, we took disciplinary action. But I also want to say too, because this whole thing created a cloud of suspicion over educators, I think there's a room for a community discourse around and educators giving kids every opportunity they can to succeed.
Right.
I.e., hey, you made a 0. I'm gonna let you do it again. Okay, well, I'm gonna let you keep doing the assignment till you get, a 7.
And I may give you a D.
Yeah, that, or people who come in and say, we're gonna give you a grade and floor. We're not gonna give you anything less than a 55 because I know if you get a 0, then there's no way you're gonna pass. Now you're not gonna come to school, or you're gonna be acting up. So like a lot of those things were really born out of trying to support kids who need support. But there is a line between, helping and giving second, third, and fourth chances and just doing wrong. And there were some instances where, people did wrong.
And you had to deal with those folks.
And we had to deal with those folks. And I think at the end of the day, people recognize when you do wrong, there are going to be consequences. And over my tenure, we've had some instances like that. And I'm satisfied that when we found wrongdoing, we've treated people fairly and appropriately.
I'll say this, that I don't think I've heard, you remind me of the Barack Obama administration, and with the exception of this grading piece, and then busing, sometimes, you're talking about a vendor outside. I have not heard anything that's come out of your office, out of the administration building, that said that this guy's got stink on him. Mm-hmm. Have you heard that, Luther? I just hadn't heard that.
No,
have you had some bumps in the road? Sure, we've all had them, right? The president had them. But I don't recall any major scandal. This grading thing, sure.
No, I'm a praying guy. And I think that's favorite. I mean, like it.
What is it? Grandma praying for me.
But I think that the people that are around me, we try to model what we say. I mean, you just got to have integrity. You got to lead with humility. And, again, you're going to make mistakes, own up to your mistakes, and then when they happen, just make sure they don't happen again.
I like to hear that. You're listening to Funky Politics, powered by the Kazukian Network.
Funky Politics.
DC.org.
Kazukian.
Best in Blue.
Well, GREAT is an acronym that stands for Gang Resistance Education and Training. We'll teach them how to be good communicators. We'll talk about bullying, things like that.
On the Kazukian Network.
We're back with you right here on Funky Politics, powered by the Kazukian Network. I am DC, sitting in with our education correspondent, Luther Mercer, and we are, we're having a heck of a conversation.
It's deep, brother.
Man, with the superintendent of Shelby County Schools, who's still with us.
Hey, guess what? I got to hit him, though.
You got to hit him with something?
I got to hit him before you get out of here.
Dorsey Hopson.
There he is.
Hit him with something.
Well, you know what? We've been talking about a lot of different things. I know we can spend another hour talking with you, Dorsey.
Yeah.
And one of the biggest challenges I want to hear from you, DC mentioned it, around the city. Yeah. Working to build, as DC mentioned, relationships, but specifically going directly to funding for our children.
Yep.
What is the proper funding? Where should we be right now?
Yep.
What are some of the constraints you had to deal with? Then now, going forward, what does this look like?
Yep.
Because you're leaving.
Yep.
You're putting it in the hands of another person.
Yep.
Right now, it's an interim person, but we don't know who's going to be permanent. But we're putting it in the hand of an interim person. I mean, where are we?
Well, I think two things from a public body standpoint. I'm really disappointed, if I'm in all candor, in our relationship with the city, not any one individual. And I say that because Memphis proudly says we're not an education funding business, and I think that
that's crazy.
And let me just give you some context. Like if you go to Arlington and Collierville, those folks decided, we're gonna pay more for our kids. So like, and just really quickly, so the county commission funds all the districts, and then those municipalities pay additional money. So the poorest kids have one funding stream. The more affluent kids have the county and their municipality.
That's right.
So when we talk about that 40,000, 10,000, and with the least amount of support and the greatest amount of needs, is troubling. And I know that people may not necessarily want to support education, through dollars, but there are a lot of things that could happen. Now, I do applaud, Mayor Strickland for committing to some pre-K funding. I think that's a good start. But we need a lot more support, and you can be creative in the ways you support. For example, we know all these buildings are in bad shape, in the city of Memphis, in the core. Why couldn't the city say, we're going to float some bonds and put some new schools because they're right here and these are our residents. And I think that many of our council people and other elected people, proudly run from, we not in the education business.
Right.
And that's just, that's
the wrong attitude. Right.
And with that attitude, can I just say one thing? I mean, I understand and I appreciate your language of creative ways to deal with, but that's wrong. The idea is everybody else doesn't have to be creative. Why is that? We need to hold our city accountable for saying, hey, you're not in this and you need to be. You should be. You are.
Well, let me say this now. This mayor, the current mayor we have now, and in his defense, he's not the one that made the decision. Maybe helping it as a councilman, but as the mayor of the city, he didn't make the ultimate decision to say that we are out of the education business.
But we do
there was another black man that was sitting in the mayor's office. Now.
Absolutely.
I'm gonna call it like it is.
We do.
See, this funky politics. There was another black man down there.
I agree.
And we got some black kids here that go into a school that the water's running on top of their heads.
But now we got another mayor. We got another mayor now, so we got to keep that pressure. We got to keep that pressure on any and all and every mayor.
Hell yeah, call it like it is.
No, I think again, I'm not trying to throw shade on anybody.
Right. No, without that.
But I think at the end of the day, this started again when I came back to Memphis in 2008. The city council's big move was we ain't funding education no more,
and we're proud about it.
There's a law that requires you guys to do it. Well, we ain't doing it.
Right.
And so that was the council back then. We had several councils since then. I think that was different mayors since then. So at the end of the day, where your treasure is where your heart lies. So at the end of the day,
don't get scriptural on us, Doc. Don't preach on us now. But you're right now.
Your priorities are reflected in your spending.
Right.
If you look through your bank statements and you see what you're spending your money on, that shows what your priorities are. So collectively, I would think the city, whether it's mayor or whatever, knows that here's the state of Memphis. We know we are where we are as a city. We know the things we need to do to move forward. We know we had this big crime problem, poverty problem. So if it's a priority to get the education system better, there are ways that you can fund that.
I think you're listening to Funky Politics, powered by the Kazuki Network. I think what I see encouraging from the county mayor, he wants to appoint a special assistant for education policy, which I think is good.
He made that appointment on today.
Oh wow! Yeah. Who did he pick?
Cedric Gray. Cedric Gray is he's a former MCS.
Yeah, that's right.
He was the superintendent in Fayette County and Jackson. That was a great choice.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And so hopefully that'll be a good partner for Dr. Ray right now in working with the county to say, these are our needs. And
I'll say to you, just to finish that question, like the city council and the city is one thing, but it's been great. We have great relationships, I think, with the county, with the county commissioners and the new mayor. I'm excited about his vision and leadership around education. We had some really, really great relationships with the former county commission. Of course, there are 8 new commissioners now, so there's going to be some work around reestablishing those relationships. But from all I hear, they're going to be supportive of improving education systems where they can help.
Let's talk about the relationship with the state of Tennessee.
Yep.
Dr. McQueen, we know Tea and Ready was never ready. I don't know why they should never call it Tea and Ready, Luther. Call it Tea and Wrong.
Tea and Wrong.
It's Tea and Wrong.
Okay.
But Tea and Wrong never got to the point where it was an infallible situation where you could use a date. I mean, why are we still dealing with a system that we don't know if it'll work tomorrow or not?
Right.
Well, I think that, once you make these long-term commitments, in these contracts, then you're almost stuck. Yeah. But I don't want to blame Candace for that whole deal. No. I mean, I think at the end of the day, when they first said we're going to test these new standards, there are some tests that have been around for a long time, the Park Assessment, Smarter Balance. And so the legislature says, we don't want to have this Obama Common Core, and we don't want to have this Obama test. So we're going to make our own test up. We're going to get our own standards. So we basically had to create a test. And when you're creating a test,
as long as it ain't Obama. I don't want that Obamacare. I want the Affordable Care Act.
and I think that was part of it. So you're trying to, and now you try to get a little bit better every year. But I think that there's no confidence in the test, which causes a lot of challenges.
Yeah.
Well, you're listening to Funky Politics, powered by the Kazuki Network. the relationship now goes on to the Secretary of Education in terms of, this is Betsy DeVos, and we all know that she has no basic education background. I think she was on some foundations that supported charters. We've had a lot of folks that come in this studio and talk to us about choice education.
Yep.
And I got down to the point where I would say, are we talking about charters when it comes down to it? Are we talking about, we're talking about vouchers? And I have nothing against any, I came through a public education system, and I know charters are still public education. But where do we draw the line now that we've got a governor talking about he's probably for a voucher system?
Yeah, so, the voucher debate has been in our legislature for the last 4 or 5 years. And I think from my perspective, I'm not necessarily against limiting, kids and families' choices. There just need to be good choices. I think what happens, you say, hey, we don't have charters, and then charters become a panacea, and everybody opens up the charter, and you're not getting any better education.
And it becomes a panacea, right? And
I mean, I've even on the voucher deal, I think what you have happen is people just start opening up a bunch of private schools, and then there's no accountability, and then that just siphons off tax dollars, and you still don't get better education. So you get whatever you do, you need to have a way to monitor and measure what's good and support those. If it's not good, you shouldn't be spending tax dollars to do it.
But you won't know this. You won't know about the outcome for about 5 years. It doesn't take about 4 or 5 years to figure out an outcome of a student. Doesn't it take about that?
Well, it takes that long, but I guess speaking about these different options and so forth, there's now enough data. Look around the country, for example, with vouchers. I think Superintendent could, you can speak to that you can look and see already what are some of these outcomes. So we can get enough assessment to say whether or not this would be good within our own system.
And I'm not aware of any study that says that vouchers improve outcomes for kids in poverty. I'm just not aware. I mean, I think they're all for choice. If people, you also want to give people an opportunity to do different things if that's what they want to do, but it ought to be quality choice.
Superintendent, I know we only got a few more minutes, and I know you got to go. But before you do, I'm gonna come back to you personally. As a leader inside the Shelby County Schools, the time that you had, the things you've done, what would you think one of your biggest shortcomings? What was the biggest thing that you wish kind of was a gap that you could have filled, or that was within your space that you said, man, if I had that, we also could have done some of these other things. What was that?
Probably talent. I mean, I think at the end of the day, one of my biggest shortfalls as a leader is I'm probably, too nice and probably slow to pull the trigger on people who probably should have the trigger pulled on them.
Wow, that's saying a whole hell of a lot.
Hey, now this interview done got kicked up. Now let's start.
Now that you've been fired from Hallie Grove Elementary School.
People come in and they work so hard, and so that just breeds a certain level of loyalty. But there have been a few times where, I knew early on that somebody probably didn't have the skill set to get where we needed to go. And you try to coach them and you try to support them, and I probably held on too long. It caused me to be sued a time or two. When you do pull the trigger.
We didn't hear about those suits here, but anyway, go ahead.
But I think at the end of the day, we've got big thoughts and big vision here, but you got to have the human capital to do it. And so unlike sometimes in Atlanta or Chicago or DC, sometimes it's hard to attract some of the people that you want to have, either because of the region we live in or because we don't pay a whole lot. I know people say, they got all those 6-figure salaries, but, when you compare them in the market, we don't pay a whole lot. So I think we are limited by talent. But the flip side of that is it often requires you to develop talent. And we've got a lot of, don't get me wrong, we've got a lot of great homegrown talent here.
We sure do.
But, unless you're from Memphis, this usually isn't high on people's list in terms of, hey, I want to relocate to Memphis. So that causes you to have to do some different kind of recruiting strategies that oftentimes put you at a disadvantage.
Well, I asked you about charters earlier, but let's talk about some of these partner organizations like a Teach for America, New Leaders, and other. I mean, you got all of these entities coming in saying we want to help support you. But yet, there's varying outcomes that has come out of these things, and you're trying all these different spaces. Is there something within that framework you say, okay, if I could do it again, kind of here's how I would move and address some of these other issues on talent, because as teacher preparation and also on principal preparation with New Leaders.
I think that's why we had those organizations, quite frankly, because of the talent gap. Or the inability to recruit, really a lot of just a few critical mass of non-Memphis folks. I don't know we do anything different. I think at the time we were using those people or those organizations, even now, it was in the height of reform, and this was research-based, and we did get some good results, and then also didn't hurt that. We were working with the Gates Foundation, so they funded a lot of that stuff at the time. So, again, nothing stands out, in terms of like what we do differently in terms of talent. I think we did with the right stuff for the time. Now you look back on and say, well, maybe this worked, maybe that didn't work, but at the time it was based on research and best practices. I
got a double-barrel shotgun question. I want to go back to the Gates piece, but I also want to talk about the opportunity you had to endorse who absolutely became the new governor of the state of Tennessee, Bill Lee. Yep. But I want to hit the Gates piece first. Was the Bill and Melinda Gates funding, was that critical to us ushering us into a new era of reform in terms? Did it help the district in and of itself?
I think there's a mixed bag. I think it did help to. Some of the reforms were good, like maybe some of the teacher evaluation. Now it wasn't perfect, right? Like it used to be you're a teacher, you don't get evaluated for 5 years. Yeah. Now we have regular and routine evaluations. They're not perfect, but they're better than what we had. But I think the Gates research and all of their findings have been that all the money they spent, probably close to $1 billion, it didn't nearly reach the outcomes that they had hoped. So
I want to go straight to the other piece. Yep. You endorsed Bill Lee for governor of the state of Tennessee, a Republican and there was a Democrat in the race, Carl Dean, who's former mayor of the city of Nashville. A pretty smart guy, attorney. I think he was also
big on education.
He was big on education, public defender. He was also keen to some choice as well, too. Right. So he wasn't against it. Yep. You took a big hit for that in the media. You took a big hit for that. A lot of us thought, well, at the least, this guy's getting ready to be the Secretary of Education. At the most, I'm telling my folks, this guy's going to be deputy governor. You're going to see a guy pick up an African-American male out of the city of Memphis to be deputy governor. Right. Didn't happen.
No, honestly, sometimes you meet people and you just form such a connection with them that, it transcends politics. Yeah. I met Bill probably April 2017, and he was in Memphis, and he said, hey, you're somebody who people said I should meet. So a 30-minute meeting turned into a 2-hour just get to know each other session. And I was just so impressed with his, his faith and his focus on family and just his, continued discussion around wanting to make sure that, Memphis mattered and Shelby County mattered. We talked about education. We talked about so many things, and then we stayed in contact, right? And so really my personal relationship with him was bigger than politics for me. But I also want to say, too, because I did get a lot of mean phone calls and folks calling and I just,
inboxes.
I think folks can't be monolithic, right? Like you can't just say, all right, I'm over here, so this is how I got to think. Because I ain't going to think like, I'm independent, and I think that, I voted for Republicans and Democrats, in my lifetime. But it shouldn't just be based on, some party. That's why our country's in such bad shape right now. Wow. Nobody wants to work together. We got to all put our shirt on, our Democrat shirt on. We need to be putting our issues shirt and what's best for this country and what's best for the state shirt on. And so, even with Governor-elect, we talked about a lot of issues, and I certainly don't agree with everything that he thinks. But heck, when I sit down with my mama for dinner at Thanksgiving, I am not going to agree with everything she said.
But you ain't going to tell her though either. After I eat food.
But I do think at the end of the day that he's just a good guy, a good man. I think he's going to be a good governor for Tennessee.
We're wrapping this thing up. Yeah. Tell us what you're going to be doing here in a quick second or two, and we're going to let you get out. I know you got another hard stop. We're glad you came to talk to us.
I always enjoy it.
Appreciate it. You got to come back again in your new. But let the folks know what you're doing, because people love you.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Yeah, so I'm going to work in a national role with Cigna, and I will be working with the government and education group, basically using what I've learned as a superintendent, as a lawyer, to support Cigna's business development in the education space.
Wow. Yeah. What did you say? Here comes that insurance man anyway. Look, you've been listening to Funky Politics, myself, Luther Mercer, and we've been sitting here with our very own superintendent of Shelby County Schools, Dorsey, Hopson, who's still on the job, folks. He's still on the job until in January. Then he's going to go home and he's going to start doing some stuff for his own kids. No doubt. Thank you for your service, Doc.
I appreciate
your service. All right,
thank you guys.
Funky Politics on the Kazuki Network.
3.
Am I going to sit there and to argue with you over we had steak 2 days ago. I want chicken.
B.
I'm gonna be spicy all of the time. I don't care if I'm single or not.
C.
I think that the foundation is how you were brought up.
3 Black Chicks on the Kadzukian Network.
Kadzukian.
What a show! What a show! What a show! The one and only Dorsey Hopson.
That was powerful.
Wasn't it?
It was a good talk. I think that you brought up some very important things. What I learned was that he talked about the district and where it is now, C+.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, he said when he first came in, there was no grade he could be given. That's tough. But he also talked about his shortcomings. He also talked about himself as a leader. He also talked about what he saw the future of the district where it needs to go.
He did say the minority spend was at 34.8%.
He did.
With help of this board we got.
He did.
I want to kudos to Shantae Avant.
You got to.
And my girl over there, Stephanie Love and Miska and Kevin Woods and Billy Walker, all those guys.
Everybody on the board I have to give.
Doris Coleman over there.
Absolutely. Everyone on the board.
Kissing, yeah.
And then also he talked about, the team that's there now.
Yeah.
He mentioned Lynn Johnson, Miss Joris. He mentioned others who are now in that space that he believes, good people, they're going to be able to carry it on. And so I think we got a conversation with them. We should probably have a conversation with some of these people next to see where they want to go.
Well, you know what? We're going to have them on Funky Politics.
Uh-oh.
Dr. Joris Ray, I'm calling you out right now. Come on to Funky Politics.
Funky Politics.
You are the next superintendent of Shelby County Schools. We'll see you then.
Funky Politics, recorded at Kadzukian Studio. Directed, produced, recorded, and distributed by Kadzukian.